All right, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into OpenAI.
Okay.
You sent over some seriously interesting excerpts from their Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And wow, there is just so much to unpack here.
Right.
We're talking about the company behind ChatGPT, DALL-E, even a text-to-video model called Sora.
I know, it's crazy, right?
It's mind-boggling how they've managed to do so much in such a short time.
Is.
So are you ready to explore how OpenAI went from this small group to a global name?
Absolutely.
And who are the major players? And what have they actually accomplished?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So I was looking through these Wikipedia excerpts, and it says that OpenAI started back in 2015,
Yeah.
which honestly is kind of hard to believe because it feels like they've been a major player for way longer.
I know. It's crazy how much they've done in such a short time.
You know, like 9 years.
It's incredible.
It just seems like they've always been there, but I guess that's how fast technology moves.
Right. Like, think about it 9 years ago. Where was AI then compared to where it is now?
Exactly. It really puts things into perspective.
It does. It really does.
So according to what you sent over, they started as this small group that was just really passionate about technology, just kind of huddled together with this massive billion-dollar dream.
$1 billion dream in someone's living room. Can you imagine?
Hold on, $1 billion in someone's living room.
That's how it all started. Apparently, it was Greg Brockman's living room, to be exact.
Okay, so not just any living room. We're talking about some serious tech talk happening there.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about some of the biggest names in tech brainstorming the future of AI.
And one of those big names was Elon Musk, right?
Exactly. Before he was running X and trying to colonize Mars, he was worried about AI becoming too powerful.
Right, because I remember back then, he was talking about the risks of AI a lot.
Oh, yeah. He was sounding the alarm bells, saying things like AI could be more dangerous than nuclear weapons.
That's a pretty intense comparison.
It is. But he wasn't just being alarmist. He genuinely believed that AI had the potential to go rogue and we needed to be prepared.
So it wasn't just about creating AI, but making sure it didn't, take over the world.
Exactly. Musk, along with Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and a few others, were really focused on this idea of artificial general intelligence, or AGI for short.
AGI, that's the kind of AI that can basically do anything a human can do, right?
And more. Think of it like the AI you see in sci-fi movies. It's the type of AI that could potentially surpass human capabilities across the board.
Okay, now that is both exciting and a little scary at the same time.
Right. And that's exactly why they started OpenAI. They saw both the amazing benefits and the very real risks of AGI.
So they wanted to be the ones to steer it in the right direction.
Exactly. They believed that creating a dedicated research organization, one that was focused on developing AGI safely and ethically, was crucial for everyone.
That makes sense. Having some ground rules from the get-go is probably a good idea when you're dealing with something as powerful as AI.
Absolutely. They didn't want to wait until it was too late and then try to play catch-up. They wanted to be proactive about safety from day one.
So they had this billion-dollar dream. But did they actually have $1 billion to start with?
That's where things get really interesting. They had this big initial pledge, but the actual money they raised by 2019 was only about $130 million.
Wait, so not even close to $1 billion?
Nope, not even close, at least not at first.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
So how did they convince people to work for them if they weren't, rolling in cash right away? Especially those top researchers they were going after.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you attract the best and brightest when you don't have the biggest paychecks?
Exactly.
Well, it seems like they offered something even more valuable than money, the chance to be a part of something groundbreaking, something that could change the world.
So it was the mission that drew people in.
It seems that way. They managed to recruit some of the top researchers from companies like Google and Facebook, places that are known for, shall we say, generous compensation packages. But instead of just offering more money, OpenAI offered something different.
What kind of something different are we talking about?
Think about it. These researchers were already at the top of your game. They could have easily stayed where they were, making a lot of money, but they chose to join this relatively small organization with a much bigger vision.
So it was about more than just the paycheck.
Exactly. They were taking a chance on this idea, on this mission to develop AGI for the benefit of all humanity. It was a risk, but it was a risk they were willing to take because they believed in what OpenAI was trying to achieve.
That's pretty inspiring when you think about it, the power of a big idea.
It really is. It shows that even in a field like tech, where money often talks the loudest, passion and purpose can still be incredibly powerful motivators.
Okay, so they had the talent, they had the drive, but they still needed more money, right? They couldn't just run on good vibes forever.
You're right. Eventually, they needed more resources to really scale up their operations.
And that's where Microsoft enters the picture, right? With $1 billion.
You got it.
Yeah.
In 2019, OpenAI made a pretty big shift. They transitioned from being a nonprofit to a capped profit company.
Capped profit, now that's a new one.
Basically, it means they could bring in investments and even offer equity to employees like a traditional company, but there's a limit on how much profit investors can make.
So it's kind of like a hybrid model.
Exactly. And this move paved the way for Microsoft to swoop in with their billion-dollar investment.
Ah, so they finally got their $1 billion. Just not exactly in the way they initially planned.
Life rarely goes according to plan, does it?
True that. But this capped profit model, while practical, must raise some eyebrows, right? Didn't this move away from a purely nonprofit structure spark concerns about whether they were straying from their original mission?
Oh, absolutely. It was a controversial move, for sure. After all, when you're talking about something as powerful as AI, balancing profit with ethical considerations, well, it's not always easy.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
You're right, it was a big deal. I mean, think about it. You're trying to build trust and show you're committed to the responsible development of AI, but then you make this move that some people see as prioritizing profit over ethics. How does that look?
Not great, to be honest.
Exactly. And it really ignited this debate about whether a company aiming to democratize AI could really walk the walk while chasing profits.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to strike, for sure. But you have to admit, the influx of resources from Microsoft did seem to light a fire under their development timeline. I mean, they put out an incredible amount of stuff since then.
It's true, they went into overdrive. Think about GPT-3, for example. That was a game changer. It could generate text that sounded like a human wrote it.
I remember when GPT-3 came out, everyone was talking about it.
Right. And then there's DALL-E, which is like magic. You describe any scene you can imagine, and boom, it creates an image for you.
I know. It's like having your own personal artist. Although I'm not sure how artists feel about that.
Haha, good point. And of course, we can't forget ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT really seemed to capture everyone's imagination.
Totally. It was like AI became accessible to everyone overnight. Suddenly, everyone's chatting with bots and getting their questions answered.
It's been pretty wild to witness.
Tell me about it.
But with all this progress, it hasn't been all smooth sailing, right? I mean, I remember reading about those concerns about their data practices and copyright issues.
Oh, yeah, those are serious concerns. It's like that old saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
It definitely applies here, especially when you're talking about AI.
Absolutely. And those concerns about data practices and copyright, those are just the tip of the iceberg. There were also allegations of worker exploitation.
Worker exploitation. Tell me more about that. What happened there?
So OpenAI was working with this company called Sama, which they contracted to help with content moderation.
Content moderation, that's basically making sure people are following the rules online, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly. So OpenAI was using these data sets with, well, some pretty graphic content to train an AI model to recognize and flag harmful text like hate speech and things like that.
Okay, but how does that relate to worker exploitation?
Well, it turned out that the people at Sama who were actually tasked with labeling this content, they were the ones having to look at all that disturbing stuff. And reports came out about how those workers were being treated.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was bad. They were reportedly exposed to some really disturbing material for long periods and were allegedly paid very little for this work.
That's awful.
It really was a wake-up call for the whole AI industry. It showed that even with the best intentions, things can go wrong. And it highlighted the importance of ethical oversight, especially when you're dealing with something as sensitive as content moderation.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that AI is built by people, and those people need to be treated fairly.
Exactly. And that case with Sama also ties into the broader debate about data privacy and consent that OpenAI has been grappling with.
Right, because if they're using all this data to train their AI models, where is that data coming from? And do the people who created that data even know it's being used?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? And they've led to lawsuits and a lot of criticism. For instance, authors and artists have been pretty vocal about their concerns that their copyrighted works have been used without permission to train these models.
Well, that doesn't seem right. I mean, if you're using someone's creative work to train your AI, shouldn't they have a say in that?
That's the argument, right? They're saying it's a violation of their intellectual property rights.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of transparency. It seems like that's been a sticking point for OpenAI.
Yeah, transparency has definitely been a major source of tension. OpenAI started out embracing open source principles, but they've become more secretive over time, especially when it comes to the details of how they're training these large language models.
So less open and more closed as they've grown.
In a way, yes. They argue it's to prevent misuse and make sure the technology is developed responsibly. But critics say it makes it hard to really assess potential biases or risks if they're not being transparent about how these models work.
So it's kind of a trust us situation.
Essentially. And as you can imagine, that hasn't gone over well with everyone,
Yeah.
especially given what happened with Sam Altman.
Oh man, the Altman saga. That was wild. He was all over the news, fired, then rehired within days. What was that all about?
It's a long story, but in a nutshell, the board of OpenAI decided to fire Altman, citing concerns about his leadership.
Really? But he was one of the founders.
I know, right? It was a huge deal. But what followed was even more dramatic. The employees went into full revolt mode.
No way.
Oh, yeah. They were threatening to jump ship and join Microsoft if Altman wasn't reinstated.
So they basically held OpenAI hostage.
Pretty much. And investors started voicing their concerns too. The whole AI community was in an uproar. It was clear that OpenAI without Altman at the helm, well, that just wasn't going to fly.
Wow, talk about a power move. So what happened? Did the board cave?
They did. Within a week, a new board was formed, and Altman was back as CEO. It was like, this whole thing never happened.
Except it did happen, and it showed just how much influence Altman has in the AI world.
For sure. And it really highlighted the importance of leadership, especially in a field that's evolving as rapidly as AI.
Totally. But even with Altman back in the driver's seat, it doesn't mean OpenAI's journey was over, right?
Not even close. In fact, you could say things got even more interesting.
So we've talked about all the drama, the ups and downs at OpenAI.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
But where do they go from here? What's next for OpenAI?
Well, one thing's for sure, they're not pumping the brakes anytime soon.
Yeah.
In fact, it seems like they're doubling down on becoming the top dog in the AI world.
Okay, so how are they planning to do that?
Partnerships, for one.
Partnerships, like what?
Well, they've teamed up with some big names like Reddit and News Corp to feed their AI models even more data.
Wow. Interesting. So tapping into those massive pools of content.
Exactly. And get this, they even partnered with Apple.
Apple? Seriously?
Yep, bringing ChatGPT features to Apple products like iPhones.
Oh, wow, that's huge. Talk about mainstream appeal. But what about their original mission of democratizing AI?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It seems like they're playing both sides a bit, partnering with giants while also facing those lawsuits from smaller players.
It's a balancing act for sure.
It is, and a delicate one at that. What's your take on OpenAI's future, given everything we've discussed?
Honestly, it's a mixed bag. They're pushing boundaries, but also facing a ton of scrutiny.
That seems to be the theme with OpenAI, pushing boundaries but also facing the consequences.
Exactly. And it's not just external pressure. They've got internal conflicts to deal with, too.
True, we saw that with the whole Altman situation.
Right. And it makes you wonder, can they really be the good guys of AI with all this going on?
It's a question that's going to keep coming up as they grow.
Absolutely. And it's not just about OpenAI. It's about the future of AI as a whole.
It's bigger than just one company.
Exactly. This technology is evolving so fast, and it's up to all of us to figure out how to use it ethically and responsibly.
It's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, I think we've done a pretty good job of diving deep into the world of OpenAI today.
We covered a lot of ground, from humble beginnings in a living room to billion-dollar deals and global influence.
It's been fascinating, to say the least.
Totally agree. And a little bit terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, a healthy dose of terrifying is probably a good thing when you're talking about something as powerful as AI.
Couldn't agree more.
So to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride, and we can't wait to see what the future holds for OpenAI and the world of AI as a whole.
Until next time.